What's up, everybody? I don't know if that sound worked. We'll have to get that figured out for the next one. Exciting days in Maximus. We're on day 6 of our 14-day minting. It's been a hell of a ride so far. So far, we have about 84 million hex pledged to the Maximus contract. That's almost $11 million. And we have, it's currently day 870, and then the minting phase ends on day 879. And so have about 9 days left. Don't rush. But if you want to mint, you absolutely have to do it by then. Today I just wanted to hop on real quick and go over the smart contract. But before we get into that, we can just let's look at some of the numbers. It's so fun to just sit here and just like watch these pledges come in. If you click on ERC20 transactions, you see, a lot of, that's obviously a big one, but a lot of these ones are like in the, couple hundred to couple thousand hex range. And that's a really strong demographic for Maximus because of those gas savings on the staking. When you're staking as a team, you can split that gas cost over way more people to complete the same action as opposed to staking solo. So it's really good to see that a lot of these like smaller balances are being drawn towards Maximus. That's a really positive sign. So we so far have 2,000 unique addresses that hold Maximus. The largest holding 5% of the supply, a couple multi-million hex. Let's see how many we have. Oh my gosh. 22 individuals wallets who, I guess, okay, disregard this one. 21 individual wallets that have over 1 million hex, or now have over 1 million maxi. And that's a pretty powerful group. What I like looking at here is on this token distribution chart. What a beautiful distribution. Like in these top 100 accounts, they take up about 75% of the total supply. That's really strong. No one got it for free. The only way you get your maxi is by minting it. So it's, everyone shares the same amount of risk. And so that's a really powerful thing about Maximus. And then that's what creates this like really equally and gradually distributed supply. And some coins, they benefit from having really centralized supply. Those are coins where there's like expectation of 10,000, 100,000 X. And, because, if a large player is holding a lot of the supply, then that just can't be sold. And so the effective supply is much smaller than what appears when you read the supply from the contract. So for certain coins, it makes sense to have really massively centralized supply. But for coins that are backed by some asset, it's actually really good that there's not very strong centralized supply here, because in the event, say there was one person that had half the maxi, they could just, even though they'd be shooting themselves in the foot, they could just nuke the price forever and always keep it down. And so having it so that like only the largest individual has only 5.9% of the supply, that can help the price of maxi trend or range around that redemption value. So this is awesome. I'm so happy to see this type of distribution. And another update, so many people were asking for it. We made some changes to this dashboard page on the Maximus.cash site. So when you go to Maximus.cash and click dashboard, we now made this where you can type in any address. So say we want to, just, look at this person's, we can copy their address, paste it into here. Let's see if this works. Oh no. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's refresh the page and try again. Sometimes when the session gets reset, but if not, I'll have to fix that. We just rolled that out yesterday. But anyways, let's see. We'll try that again. If not, we'll file that in the bug reports, and then we'll get back to it later. Yeah. Okay. So we're not gonna be able to look at that right now. But what this is what a really cool part of the dashboard is that we have this calculator that takes in the amount of T shares that it's estimated to be earning from the 84 million hex that's been pledged, and we just calculate the T shares, and then here you can enter what you think the average daily payout per T share is going to be throughout the remainder of the stake term. You put in what you think the hex price is going to be at the end and what you think the hedron price is going to be at the end. And so it pre-populates with roughly what it is right now. And so you can just go ahead and toggle these numbers. So say it's going to be 8, the average is going to be 8 hex per T share per day. And then say in 15 years, we think the hex price is going to be 50 cents. It only gets back to the recent all-time highs. And say hedron only goes up by 10%. So very conservative estimates across the board. But what you can see is that the estimated yield over this would be off of this $10 million treasury would then be about 267K. And then the redeemable amount per maxi, if right now the minting stopped, would be 7 hex and 3,974 hedron per hex. So this is a pretty powerful way to look at it, because right now the minting is going on for 1-to-1, where you can get one maxi per 1 hex minted. But as you play around with these numbers, you can see what that redemption value at the end is going to be. And so this is going to be really important for the market to be able to assess what a fair value is as it prices in all the different factors and risks involved. The different factors that factor into price is one is the main driver, or who are all the maxi minters that are never going to sell at any price, who are purely using maxi for max length staking with gas savings. Those people are going to be a major premium driver, and if those people aren't selling, then the saleable supply of maxi is much smaller than the total supply. So people not selling, that's a factor that pushes the price up. New people coming in and wanting to buy because they want access to that low gas staking, that's another group of people pushing the price up. People that are looking to trade, the people that think that it's even at a premium, but they think the premium is going to be higher. There could be a lot of traders in there buying, but they may be selling later. The market is baking in the future earnings, because at the start it's backed 1-to-1, but then what the market may be pricing in is, what is this end value? That's the multi-billion-dollar question here, is what is the max length hex stake yielding? And for the first time ever, we're going to have a place where the market can speculate on what those earnings are going to be. And so what you see the price in the market, that factors in the principal, the current earnings, the future earnings, and then those future earnings discounted to the present, because they aren't redeemable just yet. A lot can happen in between now and then. You don't know what the price is going to be of those assets at that time. And so the market is trying to measure all those things, and then discounting to the present, and then also discounting, various risks. So some risks may be what I've heard people complain about is, oh, Maxi can't get airdrops. Well, you can't get airdrops that are only given to hex stakers, because part of the security consideration of the Maximus contract, which we'll get into in a minute, that was that we can't have arbitrary smart contract calls, because someone could just write a malicious smart contract that could drain the funds. And so we had to cut off the external contracts at Hedron. We're lucky that Hedron launched before we were finished. And so that's why we were able to capture that. But for everything else, you just can't get it. So maybe the market's discounting that fact in, that, that's what gives hex that you would stake so low. Maybe that little extra benefit is the chance of, getting some other airdrop. But on the other hand, and I tweeted this, I said, think not about what airdrops you miss by having Maxi. Think about the airdrops that you only get by having Maxi. And so maybe that's something that the market prices in, and that kind of counteracts how the market's discounting not being able to get other random airdrops that haven't been announced yet. Other things that the market factors into the price is going to be just like smart contract risk. And so we were really attentive to this aspect of it, because we thought about who the audience is here. The Hexagons aren't just degenerate gamblers like the NFT crowd or some of these DeFi crowds that they'll ape into a contract with admin keys, massive vulnerabilities. Our audience has a much longer time horizon and a much stricter security standard. And so the security of the contract was really critical for us, and the ability to, for people to easily read it and understand it so that they can have a more accurate assessment of these security risks of the contract. Those are really important to us. And so that's what I really wanted to share with you all today. And so we can just hop right into it. Before we get there, I'm gonna hop in the chat and just see if anyone said anything. Alex K says, not a dev, but would love to know more of the risk vectors of this contracts, possibility of creating additional stakes after the first one is launched, or some other not expected behavior. Great question. So we'll touch on that when we get there. Or someone can stake everything again before everything is able to redeem. Nope. So yeah, I'll come back and highlight those while we're talking about that section. Protections about EES also. So he says ES is disabled. That's right. We'll show you exactly the line of code where you can assert that for yourself. And this is really, really good. Some people kind of tiptoe around, if they have a hard question, they kind of tiptoe around it. They don't want to seem confrontational. I'm certainly fine with even confrontational questions about these things. Like, that's actually a good default attitude to have. You can't, because you can just get fleeced if you're just like willy-nilly just agreeing with everything. Like, people should be asking questions. Sometimes people get annoyed because they've asked the same question that so many people have otherwise asked. But that's part of everyone's learning curve. And these hard questions are really important discussion. They're good for me to understand the things people are concerned with, and it's good conversation to be having in public so other people can be reading that and not having to ask that question for themselves. Yeah. So Will says, important question. That's right. Gold Key, what's up, dude? Sweaty Hexagon. Nice pie. Yeah, that pie chart's beautiful. What's up, Mixed Mix? When you paste the address, it takes a few seconds to populate. Ignore the error. Okay. Yeah, I'll need to go in there. I was rushing out that dashboard real quick while I was leaving yesterday, and so I didn't do a thorough test sequence on different browsers and such. I don't need my maxi by the time the stake ends to get my portion of the hex, correct? You do need the maxi by the time the stake ends. That maxi is your redemption ticket to get the hex. Each maxi from the very start is redeemable for its portion of the total hex and hedron of the contract. And so just by minting the maxi does not lock you in to get it at the end. Whoever has the maxi at the end, they get the hex. So you definitely must have it. All right, so we went through those comments on the chat, and so let's just hop right into the contract. So you can find the contract by just, if you've already minted, just find it in Etherscan by looking through your own transaction receipts. You can go to the website here and get it from the homepage. And as always, please be careful. Someone already did this and it sucks because there's nothing to do for them. Do not send anything to this contract address. Only interact with it through here or through Etherscan. Do not just send coins to Maximus. You will not get your money back. So every time I talk about the contract address, I have to bring that up. So please keep that in mind. So here we are. This is the contract page on Etherscan. Here we see that there's the 83.864 million hex in the Maximus contract, just under $11 million. And we see these, actions, coming in all the time. So it's kind of a constant thing. Really exciting to see people experimenting with the different functions, pledge hex, redeem hex. We made sure that the redemption window was open during minting, because we wanted people to be able to test for themselves that redemption function and prove to themselves that it works. Even though you can read the code and know it works, some people just would rather just like do it for themselves to see. And so the redemption function is available, and also it actually has some benefit of preventing the price from getting too far out of range in any one direction, which because say you're buying on Uniswap and then you push the price up a lot, and now one hex only gets you 0.4 maxi, then that's opportunity for someone to to sell at that price for hex, then mint that hex, sell at that sell at the lower price, mint, and kind of squeeze that. And so that's why we've seen the maxi price on the decentralized exchange trend right around the hex price, because anytime there's a purchase, that's an opportunity for someone to squeeze that down. So that's part of the reason why we included the redemption during this time, was just to keep that keep that band tight. But yeah, when you want to see the contract, you just go to this contract page, and then it gives you some options. There's code, there's read contract, and then there's write contract. So this is definitely a really important thing to just be familiar with, for just in general for any contract. Here's where you can see all of the information in the contract. Actually, here we'll go through the code, and we'll toggle back and forth. We'll show you kind of where those are. Before we get into that, so when you click on code, this shows you the contract source code. So it looks like a bunch of craziness. I know in like the early videos, we talk about like our code only being like 200 lines, but you look here and there's like 1,300. That's just because when you submit onto Etherscan, it shows all of the code for all of the libraries that you enable in your contract. So like when we publish our let's just look at our GitHub here. When we publish our smart contract, all these things at the top where we have imports, these are these libraries. Instead of being imported just in one line, the actual libraries appear right here. So here we have that like reentrancy guard, we have safe math, we have what else? Just all these different libraries at the top. So when you're trying to get, most of the like all of the stuff at the top, that's just like boilerplate that comes from Open Zeppelin. This is what our contract heavily relies on, is these library contracts where if you use these as like your baseline for how to launch your token or build your smart contract, it alleviates entire classes of risks that sometimes vulnerabilities pop out of. And so in building this, we definitely stuck to these like absolutely secure smart contracts to use as the building block for our for Maximus. And so that's what all this stuff is at the top. So the Maximus contract, if you use this little outline tool, the Maximus contract, so there's there's the safe math library, address library, IERC20 interface, safe ERC20 interface, IERC20 metadata, ERC20 hedge. Okay, so all of those things I just named, those are just like the boilerplate Open Zeppelin stuff. So you don't really need to read through and like prove that to yourself. All that comes straight from Open Zeppelin. And so they have resources there for you to like, understand what these are. But then when you scroll down to, so where our contract actually starts is, let's see, right around here. Okay. So, so starting at line right around 1,200 is where all of our stuff is. Everything above that is just importing libraries. So here we start by importing the like this. It says contract hedger and token, then gives all these functions. So when you use another smart contract that's already been deployed, you have to, I don't know the technical term for it, but you have to effectively import in a virtual version of that that serves as kind of like the contract interface. And you need to define all the functions that you're going to run from the different contracts. So um, so this is pretty much just to like tell the contract that you're going to use a contract that has a functions called approve, transfer, mint native, claim native, and current day, and it's going to take these inputs. And so we get this information directly from the Hedron contract. So when I go to so Etherscan Hedron. So when we were pulling that in, what all I did was I went straight to the Hedron contract page, and then I found their functions. So like approve, for instance. So I found this, and then I just copy this information in, and so that's just how I like define what functions I'm going to use from these different contracts. And so that's like the first thing you see. So we do it for Hedron and we do it for Hex. So in the functions in the Hex contract that we use are current day, stake start, approve, transfer, stake end, stake count. That's actually not used, but it's there. And so yeah, that's just stuff to just get the contract ready. I don't know why this is all placed up before here. Maybe we could have placed it a little better for better aesthetic, but that's okay. And then these lines here, just like some explanations on how it works, a fun little graphic here, and then a disclaimer here. So please read this. By interacting with the contract, you're agreeing that all this is true. And so on line 1261 is where our contract starts. And so you initiate it by saying contract Maximus is ERC20, ERC20 burnable reentrancy guard. So that pretty much just means that like it's a standard ERC20 coin. It has the burning functionality because our redemption sequence relies on burning. So it's set to handle burning. And then also this is a important security protection that we're adding. It's called the reentrancy guard. This prevents people from writing other smart contracts that try to run things out of sequence and like manipulate our contract by like running this through their own contract that maybe tries to like mint coins but then start the stake and then redeem the coins before it goes through. Like this pretty much makes it so that only one action can happen per transaction block. So this is something that one of our auditors actually let us know that we should be doing, and so that definitely boosted the security of our contract. And then here, oh shoot. Sorry, I just accidentally refreshed the page. Okay, so then these are all just like the different variables that we use. You can go ahead and read through these. Things like when the minting phase starts and end, when the stake starts and end, how long the stake's going to be, hex redemption rate, Hedron redemption rate. And so all these things just are variables that are used in helping the logic of the contract execute. And so you'll see these names pop up soon. And then here we have the constructor. So this is what runs when the contract is created, but never again. So this is just like where all the initial conditions are set. So when we launched this, we passed in how long the minting was going to be and how long the stake was going to be. And so this was 14 and this was 5555. And then here is just how it initiates the minting schedule. It tells us how long the stake is going to be. And then has stake started as false, has stake ended false, has Hedron minted false. Those you'll see those later on. And then here, this is an important thing to notice, just how the redemption sequence works. At the start, each hex is redeemable for one maxi. And like in both directions through the contract. And the way that this works, because of how Solidity works, there's no decimal points in Solidity. Everything is integers. And so in order to do things like division or calculating percentages, you actually have to scale up by some number of units, usually the number of decimals there are. And so what this means is that one maxi is redeemable for 1 times 10 to the 8 minimum units of hex, which are called hearts. Or this can be viewed as the number of minimum units of hex redeemable for 10 million minimum units of maxi. That's like what the contract is thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking. But this is just like how the redemption rates work, is that it's not like a 1 point something. We have to so the way that as this fills up, this number will increase after the stake ends, and then the hex is minted. That number will go to some other number, and then that's how the contract knows how much to redeem you. And so it's very simple to understand, because you can always look at this, and then it's like these redemption rates. Will actually I'll talk about that when we get to the part about how the redemption rates are calculated. But these are like the two most important figures of the contract, or these redemption rates. And so, yeah, that's all it did when it constructed this contract, is it just set these variables so that the contract's ready to operate. So there's really only a handful of functions. Most of the functions are just read only. They're just for like getting information from it. So that's like if you want to go in on Etherscan and read that information, or say in the future someone's writing a smart contract and they want to operate and interact with Maxi. These are some helpful things that other smart contract could read from and rely on in their own operation. So we have this function here, the decimals. This sets the number of decimals to be 8. The default is usually 18, but since hex has 8 decimals, that's what we chose. Here we just set these constants of addresses. So here we have the hex address. I always know what it is. To be 591E. Kind of sounds like to be or not to be. That is the question. And then here's the hedron address. So those are going to be used throughout. So we define them up here. And then here is where we define how we interact with hex and hedron. So for certain transactions like sending, you use this standard IERC20 interface. But for things like hex staking, let me see. Things like hex staking or hedron minting use this like hex token interface. So those are, a little different, but just depending on what you use, this is how you call these for different things. And so, like for instance, you use hex contract when you're doing something from the user's perspective, but use things like hex token when you're doing things on behalf of the contract. And so hex contract is used when you're like the contract is sending your hex into the contract address, but hex token is used when you're staking on behalf of the contract. So that's why there's like 2 different ways that you use these. But yeah, that's just how you do it. And so here in this section, these are like the public functions. You can read them. So all these functions here, these are all defined in our code. Oh, shoot. These are all defined up here. And so, you can go ahead and just read through these. It can be kind of cumbersome, but you can also just read this information up here. So maybe instead of going through the code for all these, it's actually a little bit easier to read them here. And it shows you like this information that I pass in as, let's see. So like, all this information is visible in there. So when you read it on Etherscan, you can see what the explanation is given for each function you're going to be running. And so we have get minting phase start. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but they're literally just, you know exactly what they mean. This one, external, means that you can just read it from anywhere. Doesn't need to be read from a contract. Just anyone can read it. View means that it's not going to be like updating information. It's purely just reading information, and it's going to return a number, and then it just returns this variable. So that's like how we do get minting phase start day, get minting phase end day, get stake start day, get stake end day, get hex redemption rate, get hedron redemption rate, get hex day, get hedron day, get end staker. This one's cool because even though our contract doesn't use it, this enables our contract to be used as an oracle for another smart contract to be written where people can trustlessly pool Ethereum or Pulse that is then claimable by whomever this end staker is. Because the contract, when the stake ends, it records who ended it. And so if you want to write a contract to incentivize someone to end the stake, this gives you the tools that you need. So in designing the contract, we definitely didn't want to take on the whole gas pooling part into our contract and extend the complexity, but to throw ourselves the alley oop to be able to do some type of gas pooling in the future. That's all it took, was just saving who the end staker was and making that readable from the contract. So that was a really I really like that. Okay, so all those functions are just like the read-only functions. And before, let's see if anyone asks any questions. Okay, so no. So yeah, so go now. So those are all just like the read-only functions. That's just like mainly for getting information. But here we have like this section here, maxi issuance and redemption functions. So this section right here, so this spans from line 1356 to 1392. These are the functions that drive our minting and redemption. And so this first one here, the function mint, this is a private function, meaning that the only place it can be called from is within the contract itself. This isn't something that someone else from the outside can call. And so when you see this, you want to check where this mint is used. Like how can, like, where is this callable from? And so you just search mint and then you search where it is. So as you can see here, mint. Okay, so there's this, so this is from the library. So this is like the Open Zeppelin mint function. And as you can see here, this is internal, meaning that only the contract itself can call it. It's like a special type of private function. And so the word mint appears there. Okay, let's talk up here. So you found it there. And then the only time it appears otherwise is down here in our code. So like when you're looking at any smart contract in general, if you just search the word mint and just see what appears, you'll see exactly where it can be minted. And so what you saw on that first one is that minting here from the Open Zeppelin library, that's an internal one. You can definitely rely on the Open Zeppelin contracts. They're like pre-audited. These are like standard, like, all the bugs have been found and all the vulnerabilities have been found around these. And so mint in that Open Zeppelin one, that's fine. That's the function we use here. And then here, this mint function that we defined, you want to make sure it's private, meaning that only the contract can call it. It's not something that other contracts can call or other users. And then the only place that appears here is during this pledge hex function. And so this pledge hex function has a couple of things that must be true in order for it to go through. First, it checks to make sure that the current day is less than or equal to the minting phase end. So this makes sure that minting phase end is greater than the current day, meaning the minting phase is still ongoing. So if this is after the minting phase, the smart contract is going to throw an error, and it's not going to throw an error. It's going to throw a warning that says this transaction is likely to fail. Do you want to run anyways? Do not run it, because it's going to cost a lot of gas just to fail. It's like the MetaMask already knows it's going to fail. And if you attempt to run it, you're still going to be charged the gas, but nothing's going to happen. So maybe I should show you what that looks like, actually. Yeah, so let's do this. Let's pull this up here. And we're going to go to write contract, connect to Web3. So here, I'm going to run a function that I know for a fact isn't going to work. I'm going to run end stake hex because I know, actually, no, I have that. That's not going to work. So I'm going to try to run stake hex. So if you click, am I connected? Okay, so if you just run stake hex, so and I'll show you in the stake hex, but like this is what it tells you. So if you break the rules on any of these require statements here in the code, MetaMask tells you, don't do it. You're going to get wrecked. The transaction is going to fail. I don't even know if you can see the MetaMask right now, to be honest, but it says this transaction is expected to fail. Trying to execute it is expected to be expensive but fail and is not recommended. I will try anyways. So do not, like, if MetaMask throws you a warning, do not run try anyways, because that means that one of these rules is broken. And that's how the contract prevents things like people from minting after the minting phase ends, is that the transaction will purely fail, and then no steps within that transaction will go through. So that's a pretty powerful piece about Solidity, is that you can just like define like a simple criteria where if it's not true, that transaction will not succeed. And so that's how you can prevent things like people minting after the mint phase. So when people ask that, how do you make sure that no one mints more coins than is expected? You can point directly to line 1369, which says minting can only happen during the minting phase. If the current day is greater than minting phase end, this whole transaction will fail and it won't even get to this part. And so this pledge hex function, so it makes sure it's in the minting phase. It makes sure that the amount that you're sending is less than what what you've allowed the Maxi contract to send on your behalf. So that first step on the Maximus.cash website is to approve the amount of hex. So you're setting this allowance, and then it checks to make sure the allowance is valid. And so that's just so that it can warn you before it runs the transaction and fails because of no allowance. This actually warns you and prevents you from doing the transaction in the first place. So so that's like an important piece there. And then from here, it just says who's the from address. It's the person calling the pledge hex function. And then it transfers the hex from them to the Maxi address. And it sets this amount to be whatever amount the user entered. This is measured in the minimum divisible unit of Maxi, the mini. There's 10 to the 8 mini and a Maxi. And so once the transaction happens from you to the Maxi address, now we just mint the coins. Just hit simple mint, and then that mints to the person who submitted that request, and it mints them that amount. So that's it. That's all it is to pledging. It makes sure that the amount that you They make sure that the minting phase is still ongoing. It makes sure that you've approved the right amount, and then it just does it. Like it's just, 1-to-1. That amount that you send here on Hex is the amount you mint on Maxi. That's why we made the decimals match. Is just so it's like pure 1-to-1. And so having that like 1-to-1 thing where it's just like that, that's just like, if you want to prove to yourself that only one Maxi's ever minted per Hex transferred into the contract, that's exactly how you can prove that. And so, only reading a couple lines of code, you can make that determination for yourself. And that was really important to us because, I've come across smart contracts in the past where I look at it, it's a bunch of gobbledygook, and I'm like, what am I getting into here? But with this, we wanted to, because you're adding this layer of smart contract risk, we wanted to alleviate that as much as we could. And so that's why we, design this around that simplicity of operation and simplicity of analyzing. So this pledge hex function, which we've seen 2,000 people run successfully, that's all it is. And we know it's running successfully because when we look here, 83864 hex, and then 83861. So that means more people. Oh my gosh! So this number should always be less than what's in the contract, because some people still are just sending straight to the address, which we've warned them so many times, so many ways. Can't help everyone. That hex is gone forever. They did not mint their Maxi, but yeah. So there, this number of Maxi is always going to be a little bit less than the hex in the contract. But we've seen over 2,000 people successfully pledge hex, and so far no problem. I asked on Twitter if people were having a good time minting Maxi, and it seemed like people had good things to say. So that's really good. And so the next part of these Maxi issuance and redemption functions is the redeem hex function. So this function, it makes sure that has stake started is false or has stake ended is true, meaning that you can only redeem before the stake has started or after the stake has ended. Because has stake ended starts as false, has stake started starts as false, and then it's only updated has stake started turns to true once the start stake functions run. So to redeem hex, either the stake must not have started or the stake has already ended. And so that sets the redemption window to either before or after. And these variables are changed as the stake is started or ended. And then it also it checks to make sure that your Maxi is greater than or equal to the amount of Maxi that you're trying to redeem. So if you tried to redeem more than what you have, it's going to not let you do that transaction, and it's going to fail. And it won't do anything with the hex. And then here's where it calculates like the redeemable amount, where you have the amount of Maxi times the redemption rate divided by that like scaling factor. So you don't really need to understand too much about this, but this is just like, because there's no decimals in Solidity, you can't express something as like 1.234. You have to express it as 1,2,3,4,0,0,0 divided by 1,0,0,0,0,0,0. So like it's just to achieve that, like to get that 1.234, you have to treat it as like two big numbers being divided by each other. So that's just like a weird little thing with Solidity, but that's kind of what this means. It's just like the scaling that takes place in the other function, which we'll get to in a second. That scaling has to be like unscaled to get you the unit amounts that you're going to be able to redeem. So then once you do that, it burns the amount of Maxi. So this burn function, so let's just search it. So this burn function is this is just where it's function, part of the Open Zeppelin standard library. That's why we used it. Um, Anybody may burn their own coins. And what it does is it sends the coins to this address 0. So actually the same address that the hex goes when it's staked is the same address that the maxi goes when it's redeemed. That OX 000000 thing. That's what that is. And so that's where it's defined. You can see it like up there before our contract. You can read the actual like burn functions. But here in our contract, we use that when we are in this redemption sequence where it burns the maxi and then it transfers you the hex. It transfers the person who burnt it and then the amount that is calculated from this, based on the redemption rate and that scaling factor, it tells you how much hex is going to be returned once you burn it. So burning happens first, then the hex transfer, and then the hedron, and then it checks if the hedron minting is taking place. So has hedron minted starts out as false until it's turned true the first time that hedron is minted. And then what you see here, and so this only runs during the after the stake. The hedron redemption doesn't happen because there's no hedron, but like during the redemption phase that's ongoing at the same time as the minting phase. So when the minting and redemption is 1-to-1, there's no hedron involved. That's why it checks, so it doesn't have to like run through all that. But after the fact, once hedron has been minted, so if has hedron minted equals true, then it calculates kind of in the same fashion that redeemable hedron. It calculates what the amount of hedron that you can redeem per the amount maxi that you passed in here, and then it does this transfer here. So the sequence here is it verifies everything, burns the maxi that you're saying you're going to burn, and then it transfers you the hex and transfers you the hedron. And so I should have pulled up some on Pulse Chain testnet to show how that works. Because you see on the Etherscan receipt is you see a burn, you see a send from your address to 00000, and then you see a transaction of hex coming from the contract address to you, and then the hedron coming from the contract address to you. And so that's exactly what's happening there. So again, very simple, very easy to understand what's going on here. So like that's all that goes into this minting and redemption, like across the board. Like that's it. It's literally like across 20 lines of code. We have it here. And so now the next category of functions are stuff that has to do with staking. So here, this is the stake hex function. The things that are required of this function in order to successfully complete are that has stake started is false, meaning that because the has stake started is initiated as false from the start. So here, let's just search it. Has stake started. So as you see here in the constructor, has stake started is false. And then, so in order for stake hex to happen, in order for this function to run, the stake started must be false. And since has stake started is updated to true after this has been successfully started, what happens is that that's what enforces that this stake function can only be run one time ever, because has stake started never turns back to false. Like the only place it says has stake started is false is in the constructor. And then the only other time that that's updated is to set it to be true once the stake has been run. So to answer this person's question about if someone can stake everything again before everyone is redeemable at the end of the stake, that one line of code is what ensures that, is that the stake hex can only be run one time ever. So, this is a one-time minting. Who knows what happens in the future with, future projects. Do not use your imagination as to what that entails. But that's what ensures that no one can just like start the stake again while people are redeeming. Is that it? You know, that the has stake started must be false in order for this to run. And then the next thing it checks is that if the current day is greater than the minting phase end. So as soon as the last day, once the day ticks over on the last day of the minting phase, then this stake hex function can be run. Again, you don't want to run this function. Honestly, like if you're just like a regular user, don't even think about the staking functions. Anybody can run them, but if you don't know what you're doing, you could pay gas and then have nothing happen. So like, don't do it. You know, only advanced users should be thinking about these. You know, and because you know you don't gain anything from running it, but you do run the risk of you running running this function wow, these rules are not going to go like, say the stake is already started, for instance, say like the day takes over, someone runs it, and then a couple minutes later, someone else runs it. They click through and try to run it. They're going to pay a bunch of gas to have this transaction fail because the stake is already started. So if you run these functions out of sequence per these rules here, you're just going to lose money, and it's not going to me, not going to anyone. It's literally going to the miners. And so do not do that. Just sit tight. Someone will run it, and it doesn't necessarily need to be you as an individual. But yeah, so it checks to make sure that the minting phase is done, and then it takes the total hex. So the hex contract dot balance of. So we're running the balance of function on hex to measure how much hex the contract address has. This is the contract address, the Maximus address. So this is the amount of hex that Maximus holds, and then it just stakes that amount. It runs this stake hex function in that amount. So when we go here, it goes hex token stake start amount stake length. So that's exactly like, so when you go on into go.hex.com and you're staking for yourself, this is the function that you're running. You're running amount stake length. But the only difference here is that when you're running it on behalf of your own address. Whereas in this contract, whomever activates this stake hex function, they're so whoever goes into here and clicks stake hex, whoever does that, they're paying this gas, and they're running it on behalf of the hex contract, or on behalf of the Maximus contract. So, this function here where you're setting the amount, it does the amount and then the stake length. And then that stake length is set to stake duration. And stake duration up here is the number that we entered on the stake start. So that's 5555, and so yeah, that's purely how the staking works. And so once the stake function runs, then it sets has stake started is true. Again, that's what prevents this function from ever be running again. And then it says the stake start day is the current day, and then the stake end day is the current day plus stake length. And so this just like sets the schedule for when the stake can be ended. So yeah, right there, just in about 14 lines of code is the whole staking mechanism. And then there's the end stake mechanism. So that right here is what you run after the stake is done. So first thing it does is it checks to make sure that the current day is greater than the stake end day. So it makes sure that the last day has been served, and then the next day you can end the stake. So if you try to run this and the current day is not greater than the stake end day, it will not work. It's going to fail, and you're going to pay gas for it. So don't do that. Then it also checks to make sure that the stake has started is true and has stake ended is false. So it needs to make sure that the stake has started, but the stake has not ended. Because when you look at what has stake ended is, at stake ended is initiated to be false right here. And then, um, where are we? Yeah. And then it's only set to be true here. And so once this is set to be true, then this require statement will break because the stake has already been ended. So that's what makes sure that the end stake can only be run if the stake has started, but also not ended yet. And it's served the correct term. So this right here, I think someone in the chat asked about EES. The only way that this contract can end, this ends because this function itself here is private, so that can only be run like the one that actually calls the hex contract and runs stake end based on the stake index and stake parameter. So this end stake hex is private, so only the contract can run it. And then this right here, so but the external endpoint to this function is this public or the external end stake hex. It checks here right off the bat, is the current day greater than the stake end day? And so that's how you know that it can't be run before before this is done. So that's how our EES proof is right there. And so once the stake ends, so once it runs end stake, the hex is then minted back into the address. Then has stake end is set to be true. Now is where it calculates what the hex balance is. So hex contract balance of. So the same thing it did before, the Maximus address balance of hex. And then you have your total maxi supply, which is just the total supply at this moment. So keep in mind that if you run the burn function, which you could actually burn your maxi, that just reduces this total supply of maxi, and that increases the redemption rate, because this total maxi supply is the denominator in this calculate redemption rate function, where this is what calculates the hex redemption rate or the hedger redemption rate. So a fun thought experiment is, what if someone created a project in the future where to get it you had to sacrifice, and then half the sacrifice funds were burnt and that just drastically reduced the amount of maxi that are then redeemable for hex, and so that makes the amount of hex redeemable per maxi greater. And so this was a key ingredient to not going to say future anything, but just like a key ingredient here is that this redemption rate is based on how many maxi there are at the end, not just how many maxi there ever were. So that's I like to note this. But yeah, so it just runs this calculate redemption rate function. And then that's right here where I was talking about that scaling thing. So pretty much you have the scalar by, you choose any large number, we chose 10 to the 8. So you take the balance, so the treasury balance, so that's the amount of hex in the contract, times the scalar divided by the maxi supply. That gives you that number with 8 zeros that's used as the redemption rate. So that's just that's exactly how the redemption rate is calculated at the end. So there's not any tricky math here. This is purely just because it's 1-to-1 in and it's 1-to-1 in and then pro rata on the way out. It makes this very simple to understand. So yeah, that's just how it works there. And then here it saves this end staker value to be the person who ended the stake. So whomever paid the gas to end the stake, they are honored in forever by having their address saved in the Maximus contract. And maybe we'll see other contracts that organize trustless pools to reimburse this person. Okay, so the last two functions left are, really it's just one function, but split into two, is the stuff for minting hedron. So right here, this is the external function that anyone can call. run the mint hedron. And so what you have here is you run hedron token.mint native when you pass in the stake identifier. Then that mints you your hedron. Then it calculates how much hedron is in the contract address. And then it calculates how many maxi there are. And then it calculates a similar redemption rate as we saw for the hex redemption rate, but it does for hedron. Same equation, same exact equation. And so that's so every day that goes by, you get like the new running total of how much hedron is now claimable. And then whatever it is at the end. Like, so the last time that this mint hedron function is run, that's like what gets finalized. So like say on the last day of the stake, someone wants to run it. That's when it gets finalized. And then that's what the hedron redemption rate will be. And then right here is where it sets has hedron minted to be true. So just so long as this has been run, this will be marked as true. And then that's what enables you in the redemption. Let's find has hedron minted, starts as false. So if has hedron is true, then that means it goes through this whole redemption cycle for the hedron. But it only does that once mint hedron has been run at least once. So yeah, that is literally the contract. We literally just went through all of it. Let's see what. Can someone try to redeem before stake ends? Yeah, exactly. So you can redeem. Oh, no, before the stake. Yeah, so good question. So if you try to redeem before the stake ends, let's go back to that. So either the stake has stake started equals false, or has stake ended equals true. So say it's midway through the stake and someone tries to redeem, has stake started will be true. So that one can't do. Or has stake ended must be true. But during the stake, has stake ended, when you look at has stake ended starts as false. It must be true here to redeem, or it must never have been started in the first place. And the only time it's set to be true is during the end stake. So to answer your question of can someone try to redeem before stake ends, they cannot, because the contract will not let them. And that's how you would be able to prove to yourself if you had any second doubts. Unlike say Uniswap, Maximus Contract asks for approval of hex every time for the new mint, not just one. Is that by design? Yes. So I could have asked for infinite privileges, but I think that is generally bad practice. Uniswap is different because they think that that's like for a trading situation that may be better, but that's just choice of the whoever builds the front end that you're interacting with. But yeah, I don't really like that about Uniswap, and so I did not want to bring that into Maximus, and so this only gains approval for the amount of hex that you have designated. And then not only is it you designate it in the front end, but if you say you don't trust the front end, you can do it on Etherscan. But say you don't trust Etherscan, you can do it and then see what and MetaMask actually shows in that UI what you're doing and what you're approving. You can click on the view more details, and you can see exactly what it is. And then so you can if you're worried, you can start in small amounts and you can test the whole sequence just to make just to verify for yourself that it's not approving extra or anything. And then once you run it, you can look at the hex contract, and then here, I'll just go to it right now. You can look at the hex contract and you get your approval by going to the contract, clicking read, allowance, owner, and spender. So owner, so you'd go to the hex contract page, find allowance. Where it says owner, you paste in your address, and for spender, you paste in the Maximus address and you hit query, and then that will tell you what allowance you've given the contract. And so but what happens is after you actually complete the transaction, the allowance is like reduced and like kind of reset. That's why it makes you do it every time for new minting. So, so in order to prevent that, you just have to, so if you want to be extra double certain that you've left no allowances just on the table for another contract to do, you can go into the hex contract and verify for yourself. And so that's what I'd recommend you do there. And then as far as approving every time for new mint, I haven't done this, but I think what it works is if you know that you're going to be minting more, but you're just going to be doing it over a number of transactions. I do believe that you can set your approval to be higher than, you just set it to be a number greater than whatever. And then as you mint, it'll like decrease that allowance. And then so you can do multiple minting transactions without having to reapprove. Extra gas fee for a bit more security. Yeah, spot on. That it's just like a preference. And I think that only requesting what is being designated as in use. I would prefer all contracts ask me to only designate that. So that's why this is how it is. Strength and honor. That's right. Okay, I think he's answering a question about trading Maxi. That which is sent directly to the contract is effectively a donation to all participant stakers. Yep, it's just like emergency end stake penalties, kind of dollied out, but only to Maxi holders. Yeah, that's exactly how the contract treats it. Name says, I don't know of anyone else who's willing to take the time to actually explain the code. Brian knew the true definition of gladiator. Thank you so much. Name's been beating the drum in the Telegram chat, making hilarious photos and videos, answering questions, just always being there for the lives. Name, I really appreciate all you do. You're a gladiator too, all of us. Extremely helpful, learning a lot today. I'm so glad you guys are tuning in. At the end of the 555 post-end stake, I'd assume all liquidity for Maxi will be drained. It would be funny sitting on some Maxi that has zero market value, but has 100% of the treasury redemption value. Yeah, that could be true. Or honestly, there may be people in there that are just like have bids like ready for people who like don't want to redeem and book that as income. Say they only want capital gain. Maybe they want to sell, and maybe they'll be willing to sell at like a slight discount just to, just based on how they want to plan their finances. Maybe there'll be bidders all the way to the end who will, buy from you and then they'll redeem themselves. So that may be, that's one case where I see there being a liquidity forever, so long as there's Maxi to be sold into it. Yeah, that's probably true. Market values and tradable value on exchange, zero liquidity because it's pulled to redeem. Yep. Is there a chance that the end stake function runs, but for whatever reason fails to end that stake, but has stake ended is true? There's no error path that can lead to that. No. So the way that these work is like either everything succeeds or nothing succeeds. So it'll only get so it won't fail halfway through. If that step fails, then the whole transaction's reverted. So yeah, good question. Yep. What's up, Blue? So minting headroom can happen anytime while stake is still ongoing. It's not held till the end of the stake. Yeah. Well, so the minting takes place at any time, but it's not redeemed till the end. And so this was like, the original version had nothing to do with Hedron at all. And then Hedron launched, we got excited about it. A lot of people got excited about it. And we realized that our stake would earn a good amount of Hedron. And so we, wanted, to make that available. And then the original idea was to make it so that like the Hedron could be kind of like a dividend paid out in real time to the Maxi holders. But just that was just kind of hard, just like to be able to orchestrate that. I could have figured it out if I tried harder, but, it would have been too hard, introduce new complexities. And, but I knew that the existing hex redemption sequence worked. And I'm like, okay, well, rather than going through that headache of figuring out how to do ongoing Hedron, redemption, I'll just bundle it into the hex redemption at the end. And it actually had some really nice artifacts as a result of it. One being that the maxi price now has this like wild card variable for people to factor into the future value, because who knows what the hedge price could be. Like that could who knows. So having more unknowns is good, because more unknowns mean more speculative opportunity, and the more speculative opportunity is, the more active traders will be in the market, and that just means more liquidity. And so if the value proposition of Maximus is highly centered around the liquidity of the tradable stake, then having this like wild card aspect to it, that only benefits that market. And so so that's why the hedgeron is only, or not why the hedgeron is only redeemable, but that's like an awesome thing about the hedgeron only being redeemable, is that the market is now pricing in this like future unknown value, which could cause wild volatility. And that wild volatility is awesome for both maxi holders themselves. Maybe you get a nice premium you can sell into, or people who are just coming to maxi in the future. Maybe you get a nice discount to buy into, purely because of like trading activity related to hedgeron. And so that I think is a really powerful thing that can just help our economy bootstrap itself and just bring in new attention, and add that one unknown in there that can be a source of speculation. And then also, it's kind of like, our gift to the hedgeron holders is that hedgeron's going to be minting over 15 years, and that won't be sold till the end. So that hedgeron's locked as if it was staked, to be honest, like as if it was a hex stake. And so, we're, being, good stewards of the hedgeron economy, and, building up our treasury. And then, that's only redeemable at the end. And so, it's cool to see that like redemption value climb and climb from not only the hex but also the hedgeron. Only the coins themselves will be held. Oh, yeah, so that's why we made it so that the minting can be run at any time. Previously, on one of the test contracts, it could only be run on the last. It could only be run on the last day. But then someone brought up in the chat about the AMR bonuses, and so we made it so that it can be run anytime. We thought about adding things in to like try to make the contract check to make sure it was like an advantageous time to do that based on AMR, but that was going to be too complicated, and just we wanted it to be simple as possible. And so if the mint hedgeron can be run at any time, whoever it is just pays the gas, whoever runs it. And maybe we might be leaving some hedgeron on the table because of maybe people won't be minting at the perfectly opportune time. But that's okay. Like, we should just be thankful to be alive on this earth anyways, regardless of how much hedgeron we get at the end. So, it was fine to not build in any strategy around when the minting could take place. We just allow that to take place at any time during the stake. Thanks a lot for doing this interview. Now I can recommend others to participate with less worry. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for all the great questions. That's definitely massively helpful. And if you have any further questions, please hop in the chat, hop on Twitter. We're always there. So yeah, so that's it. Let's take a look back at this dashboard. Let's see how many hex we got now. Wow, we're about to hit 84 million hex. That's incredible. Truly amazing. I'm so thankful for everyone for participating. This is like just such an awesome experience, and all the thank yous I've been getting, and all the people are just getting so happy about it. Telling other people about it in their own words. All the videos made. Truly, that just feels so special inside, and I'm really thankful for you all for experiencing this with me. That's what's so cool. Whenever I go to YouTube, you can check out the search Maximus Hex. Let's search by upload date. So many videos, all languages. Here we have Spanish, This one is so funny. This is great. This one has a great intro. Maybe I'll watch that as we pan out. Um, More Spanish, English from Britain. He didn't really talk much about it. I haven't seen that one. More Spanish. Got a baby Maxi guy. Uh, this is Greek. I don't know what language that is, but that was a cool video to watch. Our bro Abbott, he's in there showing people how to mint. More from Hex Token. More from Crypto Coffee. Crypto Coffee, thank you so much for friendship, support, all that, and showing people how to mint this, and putting your name behind this. You definitely, that definitely means a lot. This is a great video. If you guys haven't watched it, the Bobby H. Cuatro Cinco News. That's truly amazing. This one's great too. Honestly, all these videos people are making about it, so awesome. You guys are the best. So yeah, let's see if there are any more comments, and then I'm probably going to head out. One more thing to mention: don't worry about the totals, since the extra 10% bonus is relatively minor compared to other bonuses, and there are likely to be larger players minting near the end. Yeah, I mean that's just all these different trade-offs all kind of balance each other out, and at the end it really doesn't matter that much anyways. That's a good attitude to have about it. Name says gonna be minting more tomorrow. That's right. Keep the minting coming. All right, you guys. I think that's it. Unless anyone has any more questions, I think I'm gonna hop out of here. Thank you all so much for joining. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great Thursday, everybody, and we'll see you later.